I want to just talk about a few things you need to watch out for, both in the terminal window and in the host window. Now, we won't be using the host window in this course, but there might be some people who may have trouble with the terminal window or something. You certainly can use the host window and get by with it. So one of the gotchas is to make sure that everything fits. As you can see right here, I have a scroll bar at the bottom of this host window. That's not a good situation. Now, the way I would fix that would be to go up here into this little icon up here and go down to Properties. And I want to go over here to the Layout tab. And I know it's very difficult to see, but there is a gray line across here, and that is that scroll bar. Here's what's going on. I've got the width of this window set to 81, but I have what we call the screen buffer size set to 91. So this is 10 characters larger than the screen. We can't have that. We want to make sure that the screen buffer size is the size of the width of the window or smaller. So as I go, this is 81. I'm going to go down to 82, and that little line is still there. But when I click 81, that little gray line disappeared. That's the scroll bar. The scroll bar is no longer there. I want to make sure that this is the same width or less. Typically the same width is best as the width of the screen. Now, I may want the width of the screen to be bigger. I just want to make sure it fits all inside this window. If I make it too big, you'll see that it goes outside that window. That's not a good situation. I don't want that. So let's make it smaller again. I can increase the height of it, for example. If I want to make that a little bit bigger, well, now it's off the bottom. So let's decrease the top number there so we can bring it up. There we go. That looks pretty good. I may want it over there, and I may want to actually decrease this width and bring it a little bit more over toward the left, make it a little bit easier for me to use. So I just want to make sure mainly, though, that this scroll bar, and here you see it again, 100 and 140. I want to make sure if this is 100, I need to get this one down to 100 to get rid of that scroll bar. 100, and that scroll bar disappeared. And that will work. Now, it went off of my outside of my video window here because of the size that I made it, but it's just about the right size now for me. All right, so that's one thing. Now, let's move our attention over here to the terminal and talk about some of those things. First of all, I want to make sure that I'm running the 64-bit. I don't want to be running 32-bit at any point in this class. And by the way, I only downloaded the 64-bit when we downloaded Windows 7, or excuse me, PowerShell 7. Not Windows 7, that's very old. PowerShell 7. I only downloaded the 64-bit version. So in this case, I don't have to worry about that unless I'm running Windows PowerShell. That certainly does come in a 32-bit version on all Windows 10 and 11 machines right now. So make sure you're not running that. Always run as administrator. You notice that these all say administrator. We showed you earlier how to change the settings over here to make sure that it runs as administrator in the defaults, and then run this profile as administrator. I want to turn that on and make sure that it always runs as administrator. All right, let's turn the settings off now. And by the way, it should always say administrator here. PowerShell is not case sensitive, so it really doesn't matter. You'll see us use capitalization when we type commands, and the main reason is just for readability. Typically, I would write get and then whatever, service, and I will capitalize that first letter just for readability. Sometimes this second word here, and we're going to talk about this in the second week, but sometimes this will have several words involved in it, and so you capitalize the beginning of each word to make it more readable. But PowerShell doesn't care. PowerShell will run either any command either way, so that doesn't matter at all. You can switch back and forth between the PowerShell, command prompt, and Windows PowerShell. By the way, notice in Windows PowerShell and in PowerShell both, I have a PS in front of the prompt. Here in the command line, there's no PS in front of the prompt. But I can switch back and forth between these. If I want to use Windows PowerShell, I'm in the command line right now. I simply type PowerShell. POWR. PowerShell. Again, it doesn't matter that it's not capitalized. I click Enter, and now you see PS, so I am now in PowerShell. Now, you can't really tell that this is not PowerShell, but it's this Windows PowerShell, other than the fact that I got this line that said, hey, you should install the latest PowerShell. If I want PowerShell and not Windows PowerShell, it's PWSH. And now it says PowerShell 3, and I have my prompt. So if I type CMD, that's the command line, and I'm back to the command line. I can do that from any one of these. CMD, I'm in the command line. PWSH, I'm in PowerShell 7. And PowerShell, and I'm now in Windows PowerShell 5.1. You can't tell that's 5.1. And so we want to find out what version we are in. And I'm going to type a $PS version table, and that is how we find out what version we're in. So right now you can see that I'm in PS version 5.1. If I do PWSH, well, it says that I'm PowerShell 7.3.3, but let's test it. PS version table, and PS version is 7.3.3. So you can switch back and forth between all of those. Now I put in the notes for our class how to read all of these things. What do all these things mean when you type PS version table? So I did put a key to that in your notes. Well, that's about it for this one. Those are the things to be sure you watch out for as you go through this class.